I'm good.
Set every hour.
Okay.
We decided on our
Well, I'm not sure if the others are council. You're welcome to.
Just in case there's something out
Yes, I didn't hear that.
I promise.
So you know, Ryan's coming. And,
Please look over your agenda.
really 11 good. Right now. So 6 would be a forum.
No, did you count March?
Marge is an alternate, so she doesn't count towards that half vote, or 51% vote.
I have 13 names on it.
All right.
Welcome, Michael. And welcome our video viewers. Any changes that you would like to make to this agenda? I guess I thought of one item that maybe we should follow up a little bit with Priscilla's volunteering to look into town administration, things like that. So maybe if there's time and anything to report, if you
That's
got anywhere with
one
that.
and the same with the job description process.
Okay, good.
You got it.
The minutes for November 18th.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? I don't think there was anything to change, was there?
Joel said he wanted to edit something, but I wasn't sure he meant the minutes.
Well, it's gone from my head now, so it's so fun.
I guess it's history then. It's fact. All right, all in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? Abstained? I guess they're passed. Thank you. And they will be posted. I do have regrets from Julie and Marge if they won't be able to be here tonight.
And Glenn.
And
Glenn is sick.
Glenn.
Bonnie said she's on her way.
Okay.
She just,
Didn't see. I didn't look at any email today, so we might have some.
What's that like?
It's refreshing, but it gets addictive, and then you got a whole lot you got to look at. So I try not to do it too much. Holidays make it really bad. You got to go through 4 or 5 days of junk mail and all kinds of stuff. All right. Beginning with the budgets so far presented to the select board, and I'm not sure if I have them all listed here, but I know that we have heard from the police department, we've heard from the ambulance squad, although I don't know if Jesse has updated based on his new personnel or what they're going to be budgeting and
Jesse's comfortable, I believe, with his budget.
what he turned in. And the income side may change, but
The income side will change dramatically as of today.
Going up or going down?
Up.
Up, good.
yeah, that was a decision last night by the select board to approve using the standard reimbursement rates
For Medicare.
for Medicare and Medicaid for charging folks for use of the ambulance, which is several times more than what we usually bill, is that right?
Yeah, the history of that is that we started billing people for ambulance rides when we were in particular financial distress 10 or 15 years ago. And there was a great deal of resistance to it because we hadn't explained ourselves very well. So what we really said was, what we want to do is bill your insurance company. And if they don't pay, we're not coming after you. So the deal was we would send one bill. It's a little more complicated in the modern world because we don't bill anymore. It's a service. So if you get a bill and you can't pay it and you call the town office, you get the explanation. In no case is a property liened for an ambulance bill or the portion of one. The wrinkle with the Medicaid reimbursement rate that I learned today is that for most people who have Medicare Part B, Medicare Part B, it's 80-20. So what we're going to wind up doing, unless we revisit this decision, billing people for 100%, they'll pass that bill on to Medicaid and they'll feel bad about the 20. So we'll still have to have that conversation that says, no, that's not what we meant, which is pretty inefficient. But
And will
that's
the
what-
billing service done people, or they'll bill once?
Forbidden,
Okay.
absolutely forbidden. And I have to say, either that system is working not at all, or it's working really well, because I haven't seen a single lamentation in 12 years. Lots of people call and say, well, but once you say, no, this is what the policy is, they say, oh, okay.
I can live with that.
Yeah,
So if a person doesn't have insurance, the town just pays for it.
correct. Well, to be accurate, town pays for it, period,
It gets reimbursed.
or not.
Yeah.
So, somebody that's not from town, somebody failed to identify a crisis, somebody whose insurance coverage is undetectable, no property liens, no collection agencies, no thugs at the door at suppertime, no phone calls at midnight. It's not who we are.
Okay, so going back to the list of budgets that have been submitted and
Is there a cap on that?
Oh, I'm sure there is.
There's a whole bunch of different rates too, depending on what kind of services you need.
I mean, you have to go into a hospital for a big operation and then rehab afterwards, and without insurance, it runs to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I'm
The
sorry.
town is really on the hook for that?
No, we're talking about an ambulance ride.
Oh, and
So, Bernie's president. Sorry.
he's not president yet.
we do have a budget from the ambulance squad. We do have a budget from the police department, and is that the one we're gonna live with, do you think, for?
Yeah, I think the only change that's going to get made to that is the additional line to break out the money that in that first part of 2016 that we currently budgeted as wages, to spend that as a vendor payment to the state police for service, until such time that we don't need that service anymore.
So will the bottom line,
It's not anticipated the bottom line will change.
Ken, for those people that weren't there last night, is it okay to
Sure.
alliterate on that a little bit here? So, what was proposed last night was actually about $6,000 more than this year, and the fact that we weren't able, I'm not sure how many people know this, the chief that an initial contingent offer was made to couldn't go through the state police training until August. So the select board basically said, too far out, we need to do something different, and they're looking at having the state police cover on a contract basis at some point, until we have more staff. So Marcello and Penny and Roger, and I'm not sure who else, I think you were in the middle of it, and a few other people had some input, basically said we need a plan B, and that plan B is to hire another patrol officer and to slowly groom Officer Landry to move up through the ranks and become the chief at some point. And Marcello will stay on a very limited hourly basis per week for a year or two or three as needed, as far as that goes. So in doing so, they've added patrol officers' wages, and then they've also bumped up a couple of salaries. One would be potential for Officer Landry's salary to go up with administrative duties, and the other would be for the secretary wages to go up. She's been working well beyond her job description, according to Officer Landry, and in all honesty, when you first look at it, it's a 16% wage increase. That, brings her still well below what the equivalent person in Walpole is making, and has her making less money than some of the people in the highway department that do tasks that require less qualifications. It brings her closer to what Linda and Kelly are making, which is good. So I don't think there's any way you could say that bump up isn't deserved in
goes, so.
So, we have a fire department budget?
Yeah. It was submitted, I think it's in the handout from
Okay. DPW, is that the first one? That's in,
same with the
In
fire
shape,
department,
yeah,
was
that's
the
right.
first one.
It's ready for the second
for the second.
round.
Okay.
What's holding me back from the second round is that I want them all in one document. Only because I have an imagination and I've always done it that way. And now especially we have this budget cap, I really have to pay attention to the bottom line. So until I get a bottom line, I'm not willing to do any line-to-line work on isolated budgets because I think that would be spinning my wheels.
And we have the emergency management budget.
I'm told that it went out last night during the meeting. But it's probably not been posted in that document yet.
Hasn't drifted into the,
So
you haven't seen it.
I haven't got it in my inbox, but I did talk about it, and it's not going to be controversial.
Well, that depends, if he goes with what we discussed back in September, or if he makes any kind of drastic changes to it.
We'll all get a chance to answer those questions for ourselves.
I have one clarification. The 3%, does that apply to the actual operating budget that we passed for this year?
That applies to the budget that the voters passed, not the budget that the
Right.
selectmen proposed, which was lower.
Yeah. So the 3%.
So whatever the Article 2 number was at the end of March,
Yeah, that's the 3%.
that's the 3%, as I understand it. It's not warrant articles, it's not.
I know, I'm just curious. I suspected that was the case. In other words, if we amend, as we did last time, Article 2, such that the increase was in excess of the 3% mandated by our housekeeping law, it makes no difference.
The mandate doesn't affect you, either as a citizen or as a member of this committee. It constrains my behavior. It constrains what I present in February. At 10:01, I'm out of the loop. It's now your budget collectively, not the committee. Everybody in the room, it's your budget to do with as you will, and you are not constrained.
I just want to make sure where the 3% applied to the actual.
The statute's pretty clear, and the intent of the Alstead Taxpayer Alliance is very clear as well.
So, who else do you have budgets from besides those five? Anybody?
I would check that document right there. I think that's
Missing-
yesterday's printout.
Missing, Conservation Commission,
And town clerk and tax collector,
Library, we do have library.
we do. We have a second iteration of the moderator. It's probably 36 hours old. There's some new data that came in about the primary that turned into money. I don't know that that's been posted in there, but it's not a significant variation, but it's inescapable. We're going to have that election. We're going to pay it. It embraced the supervisors of the checklist budget, which is actually somewhat controversial at the moment, but I think all of that controversy is internal, and will before January, that number will be fixed, and it will become part of the moderator's budget. And as I tiresomely point out week after week, the budgets of elected officials are not actually editable in any meaningful way by the select board. The voters have a free hand, but the select board is pretty much hands up. And I think that's a good law. But so the supervisor of the checklist is an elected official. The moderatrix is elected. The town clerk and the tax collector are elected. The trustees of trust funds are elected. Conservation library trustees are elected and radically independent. Conservation is appointed. Planning is appointed.
Zoning board is appointed.
Zoning is appointed. So the bulk of the money we the selectmen have some authority to modify, and back when, this was completely different back when the Road agent was an elected position. And when we had 3 elected fire commissioners, there was a lot that the selectmen didn't do. Because those are big ticket items,
Yep.
especially highways.
You don't have a budget for the cemeteries?
Cemetery.
No, I don't think we do, but I did generate 2 warrant articles today based on a conversation with the cemetery commissioners.
They're also elected.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for the tax collector, supervisor, checklist, town clerk, cemeteries.
You're not waiting for the supervisor. You're waiting for tax collector and town clerk, cemeteries, conservation.
I thought we put in our
No,
budget
it's not
thing.
here.
It didn't make it to the,
I thought that was last month that we,
you may well have, it just didn't get to this.
okay.
Who would I ask?
Emergency management plan.
Who's your chairperson?
Sarah.
Sarah?
Okay.
Whip?
I'll ask Sarah.
Right.
Otherwise I'll forget.
She didn't have email, does she?
Nope.
What?
I've done with her. She's dead to me.
So the list of potential warrant articles,
Fresh one.
has it changed?
Gets longer every time I open it up. So I'm deliberately not distributing this electronically because this is a draft and I want to discuss it here and not react to a discussion on Facebook or at the dump. It will be a public document on January 12th or whenever we post it, and certainly have no objection to anybody making copies and stuff like that, but I really don't need it to be more widely distributed than the people who will actually do the work at this point. And the caution is that this isn't your warrant yet. This is still the selectmen's warrant. Again, in February it becomes your warrant. So we propose, you dispose. Clear as mud? That, which is not the same thing as saying I'm deaf to all advice or concern.
Yeah, I've already added some in.
It might be true that other selectmen, present or past, are less interested in help at this stage of warrant development, but that's not who I am. So that's why I brought it. Read and wait.
I noticed that a lot rely on transfers from the fund balance. Do you have any idea of how big the fund balance is really going to be before we start sticking numbers in?
We do right to the nickel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we went through the exercise a couple of weeks ago. It's $750,000.
Okay. And we need to retain,
We have no statutory obligation to retain 25 cents. We are going to retain. The selectmen have already declared their intention to retain $250,000.
so we got $500,000.
We probably have closer to 800,000. Well, we will probably run a surplus this year of $150,000. So it depends on how you want to look at it.
So we got 800 to start with, you're going to keep about $1 million, so you've got 600, 550, somewhere in that vicinity.
And no particular intention to spend it all, although certainly there are selectmen who believe it should all be spent instantly to reduce the tax rate. That's a political decision, and that will not be made in this room or at this table. But it will be made by the voters, which is just the way I like it.
Yeah, but
So when you look at the warrant that I sent out 2 weeks ago in this current revision, you'll notice that I just arbitrarily wrote every warrant article I could with 3 different sources of funding. And in most cases, I left those sources blank. Eventually, I'll have to fill them in with a recommendation.
Yeah.
I would welcome any. So far, the only guidance that we've received is from Glenn, and he's just said, these are the capital reserve fund amounts that I want to raise and appropriate. That's all I've got.
Raise and appropriate or transfer?
No, raise and appropriate. And then there's one conversation that we never finished about it, how do we want to pay for the fire truck? There's $394,000 in that fund, which is probably not enough, but we as a community have 100% latitude to spend all of that, none of that, half of it. Raise the balance by taxation. So that's how you'll see X's where your numbers will appear in January.
Well, as a planner, I think we should have some significant discussion.
Well, I hope that you'll feel welcome to have some input. I sort of like the three-part funding for warrant articles, but I'm just one guy. We've had this discussion before about the crusty old Yankee belief that capital reserve funds and fund balance funds are too easy to spend, and so when those numbers get big, then people buy stuff that they don't actually need. I'm sensitive to that argument. I don't embrace it wholeheartedly, but I believe it's real in a number of minds in our community.
I would hope it was baloney, but I know that's not true.
Well, look at how the Republican primaries turning out.
Well, that's all baloney.
Yeah. So that's the world we live in. But I would welcome advice from any quarter, any resident quarter that said, no, we should pay for that with 25% new taxation and 25% fund balance and 50% capital reserve. I don't really care what the numbers are, because what I'm going to do is take my best shot at it and hand it over to you guys. You guys as a community.
Should we go through these article by article?
At least we get copies. I didn't receive any email, so that's no problem.
Okay, yeah, well, I did send the 17 that Joel had originally sent me, and now you have 20, so.
It's inflation.
Long meeting.
Well, maybe you don't want to spend your time that way, but I'm happy to come back after people have had a chance to review this next week, week after.
I didn't want to tonight, I didn't, look, it's thinking the delivery session. It's going to be a long meeting.
Well, not necessarily. What we've discovered in, I don't know how many years I've been going to town meetings, but there is, and it's not just us. We're not the only fools in the world. There is an inverse proportion. The length of the discussion and the dollar amount are inversely related almost every time. So we'll buy that $500,000 fire truck with 9 minutes of discussion. And we'll talk about $2,800 for the visiting nurse for 45 minutes, and we'll get